What's up everyone? I'm Phineas Jackson, a fashion designer, and today we're going to be talking about why I love cashmere overcoats. So let's get right into it. Before I start with the coats, I want to talk a little bit about why I've become so obsessed with overcoats in general recently. And I think undoubtedly they are the best jacket, the most stylish jacket, in some sense the most practical jacket for the winter. And it doesn't necessarily have to be cashmere, like just a wool overcoat works well. So I'm going to trace back to I would say 2 years ago when I really started getting into fashion and I got my first overcoat. It was about like a knee length, maybe a little above knee length coat. I'll try to pull some pictures from the archives, and I really loved the coat. I was totally obsessed. But today, what I'm more interested in, after kind of refining my taste for a few years, is these really long, expressive coats. And I think there's just something really missing in a coat that kind of breaks at knee or a little above knee. I think to me it looks a little bit boyish in some way. And that's really, I think, the status quo for coats. That's what's widely accepted. People are wearing puffers or like kind of these really shorter car coats, they're commonly called. So what I've really hunted for this winter is the long overcoat, and it's been actually really hard to find. I haven't gone to stores like brand new shopping, couldn't find anything that I thought was true value. There's the Manhattan overcoat from California Arts, and that's pretty much kind of what I'm looking for, but in terms of the material and like the finished product, I just don't think it's worth the price. So that's a good segue into coat number one, and this is a Hugo Boss 100% cashmere, like extremely long overcoat. Actually, like one of my most recent purchases, I picked it up at a vintage store for 200,000 won, which is like 150 USD, 160 USD. So the product that you're getting for $160 is just mind-blowing compared to what's on market. And there's some key details. I think the first thing of why cashmere in a long coat is so appealing is you get this almost wave-like texture of the fabric when it's really high quality cashmere. It's even not that present on my coat, but I was lucky enough to go to Max Mara and see some of their coats, and their cashmere literally has like these buttery waves. It's one of the most beautiful things I've seen. But I wanted a camel coat. I wanted a coat to replace this like shorter Banana Republic camel coat that I had, that was kind of like a poly wool blend that I also really loved at the time, but as I learned more, just realized it just wasn't the bar of what I wanted, and frankly the length was just too short as well. In terms of length, what I look for is 120 centimeters from the back of the collar to the bottom hem. That's kind of the measurement for me. I think that translates to about like 47-ish inches. And I found that kind of breaks at a really nice like shin length and provides good warmth, which is good, but it provides a really clean style and a clean flow. And if I had to recommend any type of coat, I would say you really should be looking for below knee. Like, please don't wear these short coats. I mean, I used to do it too, but like now it just doesn't look good when I look now. So features I also like on this are like the buttons, and I'm pretty sure this is some sort of horn button. They have a really interesting design. The liner and everything else is not too special, but just the fact that I could get something that's 100% cashmere, like the material itself feels nice for that price point, is just mind-boggling to me. And what's also mind-boggling is the fact that I don't really see anyone talking about long overcoats, and everyone just seems to be missing the fact that they're like getting these knee-length coats and loving it. I don't know if it's just me, or like the long coat has a very traditional history, has a very practical function. It keeps you warmer. It's become less relevant in modern day where everyone's driving around and kind of cumbersome getting in and out of the car, but the appeal is just too much. And I also am living in a city now and doing a lot of walking, so it has that really pragmatic use case as well. Yeah, let's move on to coat number 2. So coat number 2 is I'm pretty sure it's like a cashmere wool blend. The more I spend time with it, the more I think it's just cashmere, like some sort of rougher, thicker cashmere, but I'm not sure, to be honest, because the inner tag is in Japanese and it's very worn to a point where it's actually not legible. But I've trust my ability to detect cashmere at this point, and I was thinking a blend when I first felt it. The more I spend time with it, I'm like, could be 100%, but not sure. And to be honest, this coat is really beat up. It's really beat up. There's like it's a double-breasted long coat, but like where all the buttons should be, they're totally gone. So it had all the like 6 front buttons off. Inside there's a cracked closure button. Then it's missing some buttons on the like sleeves, and the inner lining's ripped. There's a rip on the collar, there's a rip on the bottom hem. And I still bought this for around 70 USD. And that's for a few reasons. I really like the owner of the vintage shop that I visited, and I kind of respected the business and wanted to support. But the real reason is the jacket was exactly what I had in mind when I was hunting for this like Patrick Bateman-esque jacket. It was exactly what I had in mind. The peaked lapel, double-breasted, long. It was, I think, around 122, in between 122 and 123 centimeters long. So I think it's like the longest coat I have, and like when I tell you those centimeters make a big difference, they really make a big difference. And for me, it just has this aura. The long coat just has this aura, something that the short coat really lacks. I think is just that presence, and owning it, wearing it, feeling it. Like it's just undoubtable now. There is only one style of winter coat that I can wear. And I'm really insistent on the cashmere too, only because of the texture and the hand feel, and the fact that if you're going vintage, I assure you can find like cashmere, alpaca, angora, like these really like kind of more exotic, not really that exotic, but like more unique fibers, super soft fibers, and it just makes a difference. That hand feel is maybe something that you're not going to be dealing with on an everyday basis, but it's something that kind of brings a smile every time you touch the garment. And to me, that's worth it, especially when it isn't like so complex to find a cashmere vintage garment. And I have been the biggest vintage like person this few months that I've been abroad, like just farming the vintage stores. This is vintage, like everything is vintage. And if you don't, where you're living, have access to as quality of resources, I was hunting on eBay before I was going to these in-person shops and finding like a lot of really good steals. Not as good as I would find here, like in person, because you can kind of haggle a little bit. And I've like that Hugo Boss coat. Oh my God, it was $235, which translates to about like a little under 200. I think it's like 180, 190-ish. I negotiated it down to 200. So I like knocked off like $20-$30, and on a vintage item, like you're talking about like 30%, 20% discount just for negotiating. I really wanted the coat, got it for a great price. I don't think, like, I feel like I could sell this for double or triple, to be honest, like the condition it's in. But I don't want to get too carried away. I really like that. I really love the Hugo Boss coat. This is kind of like a fixer-upper. I haven't like decided to put in the time yet to like do all the stitching and take care of all the details. But there's definitely a lot of work to be done, but it really just has potential, and I really am extremely pleased. And then I have a little more, I guess, say in what type of buttons and what type of additions I want to make to the coat. So this is like my Patrick Bateman fantasy fulfilled in this nice peaked lapel, double-breasted, everything. So if you saw my last video, this is kind of like the dream come true here. Now again, if you watch my last video, this coat wouldn't be that much of a surprise because I already talked about it. But since we're on the topic of like vintage cashmere garments, I have to bring it up again. And looking at this again, it is by far the best made of the 3 coats I have. And like some of these details are incredible. You have like the single stitching, which makes me think hand stitching. I don't know if that's correct. This is very Max Mara design. I don't know. To be honest, I need to do a little more research on this stitch styling. I'll show like some more close-ups, but the styling is single stitched like all throughout, and just the quality of the material, the buttons. I mean, I went in depth in last video, but the only issue I had with the jacket was its length. It's basically a slight, like I was kind of reaching last time saying it was hitting upper calf. It's pretty much just below the knee, like 1 or 2 inches below my knee. And you know, honestly, I'm okay with it because the jacket itself has a shape, it has a cut, it has a feel that just still makes me really happy to wear it. Like, it's perfect over a suit jacket, it's perfect over a turtleneck. It's commanding not through its length, but through its shape. So it has these like shoulder pads built in, and just like a really strong triangle shape, like with the broad shoulders kind of tapering in a little bit. And even though it doesn't go down super long, it still kind of evokes that powerful aura, I guess is the only way to say it. So it was kind of my first coat here, and it kind of set the bar for what I could get from a coat. And I think like these follow-up purchases, you'll have to let me know what you think, but I'm just super pleased in terms of the variety it got, in terms of the color. Like if I were to get another coat, and I'm thinking now, it would have to be something that was complementary, maybe something belted, maybe something like patterned, pinstripes. So, because I have like this staple coats, like two really nice black coats and a camel, all like beautiful length. And in terms of recommendations, what can I recommend if you're interested in long coats? I would say you really honestly want to look secondhand, because it's a lot more common in the past to make these longer type of coats. Like now, short coats are just like the only thing being produced. Not over, like on average, I would say, not like you can go to Saint Laurent or you can go to the Row and get something for what, like 6, 7, 8,000, but that's just out of, I would say, most people's price range, like except the 1% or like 0.1%. But if you look on eBay, if you look at vintage Giorgio Armani, vintage Hugo Boss, those are the two I was looking on eBay and finding some really great kind of unique pieces. And then the second recommendation is just to know your measurements really well. Take your own measurements and make sure that if you're buying anything, you know the measurements. Like if you're going to vintage stores, bring a tape measure and measure from the back of the collar to the hem, get the exact measurements, get the pit to pit, get the waist. Like that's literally what I'm doing. I'm taking like my tape measure, and the curation and what you get at the end of the day, though it's a lot of work, like I'm just extremely proud of the selection, and to me it's worth it. So I'm kind of the example of, if you want it, it's there. Vintage, eBay, secondhand. If you're in Europe, Vinted is very popular. I have never personally used it. And then I would say those two brands, Giorgio Armani, Hugo Boss. Not so sure about YSL. I think YSL wasn't making men's like back then, but I could be wrong. Stay tuned. I have kind of some more vlogs coming. I have some kind of like workshopping videos where I'm kind of working on my jacket, all that stuff coming. And yeah, please subscribe, please like everything, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.